I watched in horror through the baby monitor as a serpent slithered into my daughter's crib, and then heard the unmistakable click of the nursery door locking. From the outside, Max had always been gentle. He was a kind of dog who slept beside the crib every night since we brought our newborn daughter, Ellie, home from a hospital. He'd rest his head on the rug and let out little huffs of contentment when she stirred. But something changed 2 weeks after we moved into the old countryside house. He started refusing to go into the nursery. At first, I thought he was just tired, or maybe the new surroundings unsettled him. But it got worse. Every time I carried Ellie toward her room, Max would freeze, his ears flat and his tail low. Sometimes he'd even growl, not at us, but at the room itself. It was low and rumbling, like a warning. Then the baby started reacting strangely. Her cries would spike when we stepped over the nursery's threshold, only to fall into eerie silence the moment we set her down. Once, I found her staring up at the ceiling corner, eyes wide, following something invisible with her gaze. And once, just once, she laughed in the dark, a gurgling, breathless sound, her eyes locked on a corner. The baby monitor, too, started acting up. At night, I'd hear soft scratching sounds, like claws on wood, even though Max was sleeping at our door. Sometimes the screen would flicker and show static, but only when aimed at the crib. And sometimes I could have sworn I saw something move on the edge of the frame, a thin ripple, like something slithering out of view. I told myself it was just house-settling noises. I even considered replacing the baby monitor. But then came the most disturbing moment. I went to change Ellie's sheets and noticed something under the crib, dry, paper-thin, and curled. A snakeskin, long, almost too long. I froze, tried to remember if we'd left the windows open, if maybe something got in from the fields outside. But all the screens were shut tight. Max stood in the hallway behind me, teeth bared, a low growl in his throat. And that night, he didn't sleep at our door. He slept right in front of the nursery, facing it, alert, eyes never closing, watching, guarding, or maybe waiting. It was a calm night, too calm. The kind of silence that feels unnatural, like the world is holding its breath. My wife and I were in the living room watching an old movie, trying to pretend we weren't both exhausted from the baby's erratic sleep schedule. Max had been pacing the house all evening, tail stiff, ears alert. He kept glancing at the stairs, then back at us, as if trying to warn us about something he couldn't explain. Around 11:30 p.m., Max suddenly stopped pacing. He turned to the nursery and slowly padded up the stairs. No barking, no hesitation. Just quiet, deliberate movement. We didn't think much of it until the baby monitor in my lap flickered on by itself. The screen buzzed for a second, then stabilized. What we saw turned my blood cold. A thick, dark snake was coiling over the crib railing, its body glistening like oil in the dim light. Ellie was lying still, eyes wide open, unmoving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even blinking. I stood up in panic, nearly dropping the monitor. My wife screamed. We bolted for the stairs, but halfway up, the nursery door creaked shut by itself. Then, click, I froze. That sound wasn't the door just closing. It was locking. We reached the door seconds later and found Max outside, his body pressed against it. He was growling low, his front paws shoved against something underneath. When I pushed, I realized he had wedged a chair under the handle. From the outside, my heart pounded in my throat. My baby was inside with a live snake, and my dog had locked us out. Move, Max. Move. I screamed, shoving at the door. Max didn't budge. His body was rigid, ears back, teeth bared, but not at us. He was looking through a crack under the door, growling at whatever was moving inside. It took me a full minute to yank the chair loose and shoulder the door open. When it finally burst open, I charged in. The crib was empty. The snake was gone. And Max? He was no longer outside. He had disappeared, vanished without a trace. Only the wet, glistening trail across the wooden floor hinted at what might have really been in that room. The room was still. Too still. I rushed to the crib, my hands trembling. Ellie was there, silent, eyes wide, unharmed. But something about her gaze was off. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring past me, toward the corner of the nursery. The same corner she had laughed at before. The same corner Max had always growled at. I turned slowly. Nothing there, just the wall. But beneath it, a trail. A faint, slimy streak that glistened in the nightlight, leading from the crib to the corner, and then disappearing into the tiny closet we rarely used. I opened the door, empty except for some dusty blankets. No Max, no snake, just a suffocating silence that pressed against my chest. The next day, I called animal control, the local wildlife service, even a herpetologist. No one found a trace of a snake. But while cleaning the floor, I pulled up one of the loose floorboards by the closet. What I found made my stomach lurch. There was a small hollow space beneath, mud caked, damp, and filled with bones. Tiny bones, not animal. Something had been living or nesting. Down there, the boards above had faint symbols carved into them. I took photos and sent them to a local historian. He called me back immediately. "You need to leave that house," he said flatly. "That land was once the site of a 19th century swamp cult. They worshipped a deity called Seraph, a serpent spirit that required offerings, usually infants." My skin went cold. Max hadn't betrayed us. He hadn't locked us out to let the snake in. He had locked it in to protect Ellie, and he'd gone in after it. We never saw Max again. Weeks passed, then months. But every night at 2:11 a.m., the exact minute the snake entered the crib, the nursery door creaked shut on its own. No wind, no draft, just a quiet click, as if someone or something was closing it from the outside. We moved out 6 months later. Ellie's new room has no door. I won't allow one. But sometimes in the silence of the night, she still stares at the corner and whispers a word she shouldn't know. "Max!" And then she smiles. True protection doesn't always look like what we expect. Sometimes the ones we trust the most are fighting battles we can't see, sacrificing themselves to keep evil at bay. Even when their actions seem strange or frightening, loyalty and love can take forms we don't understand until it's too late.